Now we're going to move on to photosynthesis. Before we get there, though, I want to remind you that animals do cellular respiration. So as animals, we eat our food. Specifically, we eat our carbohydrates, and then those carbohydrates are going to go through cellular respiration. We know that the first step happens in the cytoplasm, and then the second and third steps happen in the mitochondria, and that's how we make our ATP. And ATP is the kind of energy that our cells use. Now, plants aren't so lucky. They don't get to eat their food. Plants have to go through photosynthesis first to make their food, and then their food, their glucose, will go into the mitochondria to go through cellular respiration to make ATP. So as animals, all we have to do is go through cellular respiration to take the carbohydrates or the glucose that we eat to go through cellular respiration to make the ATP for our cells. Plants have to do photosynthesis first and then cellular respiration to make ATP. So again, they're going to go through photosynthesis in the chloroplast to make their glucose. Then the glucose is going to go into the mitochondria to do cellular respiration and finally make their ATP. So this came from your notes over here, but here's a blown up picture. So notice that animals just go through cellular respiration. They take the glucose to make ATP, but plants have to do both. It says plants are this whole thing. Plants have to do photosynthesis where they take sunlight and turn it into glucose. And then finally, that glucose can go through cellular respiration to make ATP. So let's look at those equations. We already did the cellular respiration equation. I know this says respiration, but it's cellular respiration because it's happening on a cellular level. We know that in cellular respiration, we took a glucose molecule and oxygen, and these were our reactants, and we made water, carbon dioxide, but specifically we made ATP. That was the whole goal of it. And the water and the carbon dioxide were just waste products. So remember, in cellular respiration, oxygen and glucose were our reactants, and water, carbon dioxide, and ATP were our products. Well, photosynthesis takes this water and carbon dioxide that we made in cellular respiration, there's the water and carbon dioxide, and instead of ATP energy, it uses light energy to make the oxygen and glucose. So what you will notice is the reactions are flip-flops. The oxygen and glucose that are products in the photosynthesis are going to be the reactants in the cellular respiration, oxygen and glucose. The products in the cellular respiration, the water, the carbon dioxide, and in this case ATP energy, are going to be the same as the reactants in photosynthesis, water, carbon dioxide, and instead of ATP energy, it's light energy. And they color-coded this for you. So the glucose here in the reactants is purple, same as the glucose in the products up here. Oxygen, green, blue, water, red, carbon dioxide, and then the two energies. So they're like opposites of one another. So the other thing we say is that the end products are one, are the beginning products of another. You could look at it that way. The end products of these are the beginning products of these. Another way you can look at it is in photosynthesis, we make oxygen and glucose, and, well, plants make it. And then the plants are going to take the oxygen and the glucose to go through cellular respiration. So a little bit more about photosynthesis. So you guys have a definition of photosynthesis, which is the process in which plants convert energy from the sun, like right here, into chemical energy, specifically carbohydrates or glucose. So plants are going to take in the light, they're going to take in carbon dioxide, they're going to take in water, and they make carbohydrates, specifically glucose, and then that glucose is going to go into cellular respiration, and they make oxygen as a waste product. Or you can look at it from the equation point of view. Plants take in carbon dioxide, plants take in water, plants take in sunlight. All of this photosynthesis stuff is going to happen in the chlorophyll. The whole goal of photosynthesis is to make glucose, and it happens to make oxygen as a waste product, which is good for us. All right, so where exactly is this happening? So some things you need to know. Again, thinking about the equation, what do plants take in photosynthesis? Plants take in water, plants take in carbon dioxide, and plants take in light. And then they give off oxygen, and the whole goal is to make glucose. So how do they take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen? If you were to look at the leaves Here's the leaf down here. And if we were to blow it up in a much larger picture, you would see something like this. This is like the outer part of the leaf. And here we see these little cells right here called stomata. And here's what they look like. They sort of look like jelly beans. And they are holes in the leaves. The stomata are the holes here in the middle, and there's little guard cells on the outside. And these holes in the leaf allow carbon dioxide to come into the leaf, and it allows oxygen to leave the leaf. So when the carbon dioxide is coming in, it's coming through these little tiny pinpoint holes in the leaves called stomata. And then when the oxygen is leaving, it is coming out of these tiny pinpoint holes called stomata, all that are in the leaves. And then obviously, how does the plant get water? It goes in through the roots. So where exactly does photosynthesis take place? We kind of have to stair-step ourselves down. So leaves are a wonderful place for photosynthesis to take place. Really any green part of the plant can have photosynthesis in it. So the leaves are green, they can have photosynthesis. The stems are green, they can have photosynthesis. Even fruit before it's ripe, when it's still green, that unripened fruit can even have photosynthesis. But the best place for it to happen is in the leaves, because the leaves are really broad and flat and have a lot of surface area to be able to absorb sunlight. So we're going to say that photosynthesis mostly happens in leaves, and we're going to stair-step ourselves down to these tiny molecules called photosystems. So let's stair-step ourselves down. You start with a leaf. A leaf is made of cells, because all living things are made of cells. So leaves are made of cells. You know that inside of a cell are lots of organelles, but the organelle we are going to focus on is this organelle right here, the chloroplast. And you've talked about chloroplasts before, way back at the beginning of the year, and you said chloroplasts are where photosynthesis happens. Totally true, but we're going to get even smaller. If you go inside the organelle called a chloroplast, there's these little stacks. Some people say they look like a stack of pancakes, and each pancake would be called a thylakoid, and the whole stack of pancakes would be called a grana. So if you look at your picture here, here is your chloroplast, one of the organelles inside of the cell that it makes up the leaf, and she's got here the whole stack of pancakes called a granum, and each individual pancake in the stack called a thylakoid. And then the liquid on the outside is called the stroma. So if you look at this picture here, the liquid that fills this chloroplast is called stroma. Sort of like cytoplasm fills a cell, stroma is going to fill the inside of a chloroplast. So now we're going to go inside one of these pancakes, inside one of these thylakoids, and we come over here. So here's my whole stack of pancakes, my whole stack of grana with individual thylakoids. Inside the thylakoids are clusters of chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a pigment. It's specifically the pigment where photosynthesis takes place. And a cluster of chlorophyll is called a photosystem. And so you can say, photosynthesis happens in photosystems. And you could memorize that, but you would have no idea what we were talking about. A photosystem is a cluster of chlorophyll that is found in one thylakoid. Thylakoids are found in stacks called grana. These stacks of thylakoids called grana are found inside a chloroplast. Chloroplasts are organelles that are found in cells, specifically the cells that make up leaves. Okay, so now you know exactly where photosynthesis happens. It happens in the photosystems. And there are two steps to photosynthesis, the light reactions and the dark reactions. So the light reactions make up the photo part of photosynthesis, and the dark reactions make up the synthesis part of photosynthesis. Synthesis means to like create or put together. If you synthesize something, you make something. So the light reactions are the photo part, the dark reactions are the synthesis part. So the light reactions sometimes are called light-dependent reactions because they depend on light. And the purpose there is to make some ATP and some NADPH. You may notice NADPH sounds a whole lot like NADH that we talked about in cellular respiration, and it pretty much does the same thing. It carries electrons. Remember how we said they're like taxi cabs or Ubers for electrons? Just like NADH carries electrons to the electron transport chain in cellular respiration, this NADPH is going to carry electrons also. Tonight, we're just going to focus on the light reactions. It sounds like in a day or two, you guys are going to talk about dark reactions. The dark reactions, just so you know, again, are the synthesis part. They're going to create the glucose or the food for the plant, which is the whole purpose of the whole purpose of photosynthesis. Sometimes instead of calling them the dark reactions, they call them the light independent reactions, because it's not that they require dark, they just don't require light. Another fancy name for it is the Calvin cycle. But again, we'll concentrate on that stuff later. So here's the difference between the way I teach my kids and the way your teacher is teaching you. She is going at a much higher level than I do. This is your notes. This is how I teach the light reaction to my kids. I'm going to take you through my version so you can see the cheesy, cartoony version just to kind of help you understand what's happening. And then we're going to look at the more complicated kind of biochemistry version that your teacher is teaching you. So remember that I said that photosynthesis happens in the photosystems, which we know are clusters of chlorophyll. Photosystem 2 happens before photosystem 1. Scientists accidentally named them backwards. They discovered the photosystems and they knew there were two of them, so they called them photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. And then they're like, oh, shoot, photosystem 2 happens before photosystem 1. Oh, well, we're keeping it in that same order. So photosystem 2 is going to happen before photosystem 1. Remember, these photosystems are clusters of chlorophyll. And basically what happens is we know that photosynthesis requires light. When sunlight shines down on the electrons that are in photosystem 2, that gives lots and lots and lots of energy to those electrons. And so then those electrons are going to travel through an electron transport chain. I don't make my students know the complications of an electron transport chain, but you guys are in honors bio, so you do need to know that. Basically, when the electrons have a lot of energy, they're going to travel through the electron transport chain and make a little bit of ATP. That ATP is going to go into the dark reaction that you'll learn about later to help give it energy. And when the electrons make ATP, they no longer have enough energy to stay in the electron transport chain, so they then move into photosystem 1. Same thing happens again. Light from the sun gives energy to the electrons, this time in photosystem 1. Again, they're going to travel through electron transport chain. And this time, instead of wasting energy using these electrons to make ATP, those electrons are going to keep their energy and they're going to hop onto a taxi cab or an Uber, this time called NADPH instead of just NADH, and this electron Uber or taxi cab is going to go into the dark reaction. Now what you will see is we have to get this hydrogen from somewhere. I can't just like create a hydrogen out of nothing. So if you remember, plants need water. One of the reactants in photosynthesis is water. So when you take a water molecule, you're going to split the water molecule and steal the hydrogen. This hydrogen is going to be the hydrogen that changes NADP into NADPH so that that hydrogen can take the electron to the dark reactions. If you remember correctly, when we were talking about cellular respiration, anytime we split a molecule, we release an electron. Same thing happens. When I split water, I release an electron. This electron is going to go to replace these electrons that I kept losing in photosystem 2. Because remember, in photosystem 2, they kept going through the electron transport chain and being accepted by photosystem 1. So eventually, I would run out of electrons in photosystem 2. But I don't, because I split the water molecule and the electron goes to replace the missing electrons in photosystem 2. I don't need to replace any electrons in photosystem 1 because these photosystem 2 electrons are going in there. So, have a water molecule, I split it, which releases an electron that replaces these electrons. I steal the hydrogen, it goes over here to change NADP into NADPH, which is an electron carrier that takes it into the dark reaction. And this oxygen to the plant is a waste product. And so it gives off oxygen to the environment. This is a perfect example right here of why plants give off oxygen. Now that is a silly, cheesy, cartoony way of showing the light reaction. It tells you everything that happens, but it's not very biochemistry-like. All right, so your teacher gives you this version with this verbiage. This verbiage shows you exactly the same thing I just said, but what I want you to do is I want you to click on this video here. This is a video that she links to your notes. It's great. It does a really, really, really good job of showing you what's happening. I'll give you kind of a quick rundown, but one thing I want you to know is where the location is. So remember,